Hello, I'm Vendry, I'm French and I'm 18. I finished French baccalaureate and I've applied for university. I wanted to interview Sister Zila because I think she has a very good experience of life and her childhood was very amazing about the war in Burma and other things like that. Hello, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Oh, I'd be very happy to. I'm Zila, I'm an Ursuline sister, and I live here in Lancaster, this community. But I was born in London. My parents lived in Burma, and my father worked for the Burma Railways. My sisters were both born in Burma. And just, I suppose I was about 8, when the Japanese invaded Burma. And it was very, very quick. I remember it was about a couple of days before Christmas, and the alarms went, and the sirens, and we had to keep dashing into the shelter. And I remember Christmas Day, we're in and out the shelter. And then one morning, a friend of my father's, a colleague of his from work, came along and said, "What are your wife and children still doing here in Rangoon? The Japanese have landed at Moulmein, which was just down south on the coast." So that day I remember we quickly packed up and we went up north. My father had to stay to continue with his work, so we went up north. And we moved from like one place to another. We got to Mandalay, and the Jap bombed Mandalay. We moved on somewhere else. Mainio, the Japs bombed Mainio. And then we were thinking, well, the only way to escape was to actually walk through the jungle into India. And I had cousins who were in the forestry business, and they were going to lend us some elephants. And my mother was beginning to pack things into packing cases, etc. So we were going to go on the elephants up the mountains and down in the valleys and across to India. And then at the 11th hour, the Chinese lent some oil planes. There were no passenger seats, which is like the cockpit of that thing. And they put women and children into these and just got us over the border into what is now Bangladesh, to Chittagong. Or else we would have trekked it, which I suppose we wouldn't have survived really. Maybe we just died on the way because it's the monsoons and mosquitoes and not enough food to eat. I don't know of any children that actually survived the trek at all. Something like, because you know where my father was, he was left behind. And you know what the financial situation would be, I don't know. It must be a terrible worry for her, but we kind of just took it as a great adventure in many ways. My father's last words to my mother were, "Go as far north as you can." Because they thought the Japanese were just advanced from Burma into India, you know, they were just advancing rapidly across Southeast Asia. So she said, "Oh fine, I just want to go to Kashmir." So off we went to Kashmir. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country. But my father, he had to walk, he walked all the way over. We got out in March of '42, but my father didn't get out till June because he was walking for a couple of months, and it was the worst time of the year with the monsoons, and they never knew where their next meal was going to come. So we lived off the land, and it was like a stick when he arrived.
Maybe you were very fierce and scary about this situation.
Well, I was frightened in the plane because I thought, you know, the Japanese might shoot down the plane at any moment. And I always remember as we left from this tiny little field, it was only a tiny little plane, and seeing this upturned tree just lying at the side of the field. And although I was only 8 years old, I kind of felt something was poignant about this upturned tree, as if, you know, something in my life had ended. And my mother said that all we could take, my sister and myself, was one little cloth bag, and we could take one toy each. So I chose this lovely new teddy bear which I'd got for Christmas. I called it Blitzy because it was as he were born in the Blitz. Anyway, so I had Blitzy in my bag. And when we were transferring across these boats were all lined up and you had to walk from one boat to the other. When I got off, I found my teddy bear had been stolen.
Oh.
So I was heartbroken. And then it happened to be my birthday just after we arrived in Calcutta. And I remember there's this one room where my mother and my sister and I were living. And she was standing by the window and she was reading a letter. And she said, "Oh, thank God, some money." She said, "I just spent my last lot of money buying that new teddy bear for you for your birthday." And that always sticks with me, that she, you know, was prepared to spend her last rupees to buy me a teddy bear because I'd been so upset at losing my teddy bear. It was quite, when I look back at her courage, and she didn't let on any of this, she just like carried on. I spent the rest of my life in England, but always longing in my heart to get back to Burma. I really love Burma, I love the people, and I kept praying, thinking it would never happen, never happen. And then, 9 years ago, I actually was given the opportunity to go back and work there for 3 months. It was a real, you know, something I never thought I would ever see Burma again. It was a real thrill to go back. They were sad because of the state of the country, but to see that Swedigo Pagoda and the gold, it kind of moved my heart. And I've got lots of family out there too, because I have cousins and things who married local girls and produced lots of children, so I felt like the Pied Piper with all these cousins running after me, wanting to hold my hand, hold my dress. I think it's influenced my faith in the sense that it's given me a wider vision than if I'd had a very kind of strict, within a kind of a Christian European, whereas my childhood memories of Burma, seeing Buddhist monks in the streets, and that was very powerful. Buddhism was very powerful in Rangoon, so I was aware of Buddhism, and my father was very interested in Buddhism. I know he was always used to say, "Keep an open mind, girl, keep an open mind." And then in India, in touch with Hinduism and Islam, and friends who belonged to these faiths. So I kind of grew up with a kind of much more open faith, I think, as a result of it. And I've always been interested in, you know, Eastern forms of meditation and prayer. And when I went back to Burma about 10 years ago, I went to visit monasteries and had chats with abbots and things like that, because I think that's where we're actually going to meet people at that non-verbal intellectual level, but just in silent, moving into the depths of your being. You could do that with anybody, whatever their dogmatic position might be. Yeah. So I think it's widened my horizons, and it kind of making me open to being enriched by other people's faiths.